Good morning. It is still morning, right? Everybody hear me in the back? That's exactly how I feel sometimes too. And let me, first of all, my name is Jared Millsaps. I'm the CEO of Parker East Hospital. Thank you all for being here this morning. And before I do anything else, that sound is why we're here, okay? If you have a baby, unless you just feel like you need to step out, don't feel like you've got to step out for us, okay? That is why we're here, and we want to celebrate that, all right? It's a great sound this morning. This is not church where people are going to be looking at you from the other row going, hey, take the baby out, all right? Welcome to our NICU reunion. We're grateful y'all are here. Our NICU, our neonatal ICU, opened in 1985. Certainly a lot has happened in the last 30 years. The standards of care, medicine in general, has changed a whole lot, has gotten a lot better. But at the end of the day, the thing that really brings us all here is the relational aspect of it. And I've got to ask, we got a 30-year-old NICU. Do we have anybody, any former patients in our NICU over the age of 20? 20? I won't ask for specific ages, but okay, so 20, 25? Anybody greater than 25? 25. Okay. 15? Older than 15? Okay, so the one back over here. All right. We have lots of young ones, so I won't get into that. But here's, I think, what we really wanted to be able to characterize this today. As much as it is a reunion, we call it that, this is really a celebration of miracles. This is a celebration of miracles. Those of you who have been through this road, and certainly I'm going to introduce our speaker who's got a story to share in this as well. But for those of you who've been through the ordeal in some cases of having a child in the neonatal intensive care unit, it is unsettling to say the least. It is a traumatic piece of news to get when in some cases you're at your most vulnerable moment to hear that your baby is going to the NICU. And to take a time when, as a parent, you want to have enjoyment, you want to have, in some cases, control over that situation. You really don't realize just how vulnerable you are as a person, as an adult, until someone takes your child away and says, we've got to do some things that you don't know how to do. That's a hard spot to be in, right? That's a hard spot to be in. It is a testament, and I want to recognize, some of you may recognize these faces, but I want to recognize Bridget Hayes. Raise your hand, Bridget. Linda Gibson. Teresa Walker. Our leadership for our women's services areas. There may be some familiar faces to you who've been in our NICU. They've been with Parker East for a long period of time, and I know that they were recognizing some faces as some of you came in today. NICUs are incredible places where we have remarkable stories to tell, especially when you consider that the average birth weight of a baby born in America today is about 7 pounds, and when you talk about NICU babies, they talk in terms of grams, right? So you're looking at 750 grams, which is, for those of us who are not that smart and have to do math, it's about 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, 3 pounds. That's a remarkable thing. In the last 10 years alone, we've treated directly over 2,500 babies, and if you think about the circle of influence that has, every baby's got 2 parents. Parents have grandparents. If you were to be a conservative estimate to think 5 or 6 people per child, that's, easily 10,000 lives that have been affected in the Tennessee Valley over the last several years. And that's just for the last 10 years alone. That's as far back as we have information, okay? Nowadays, our level 3 NICU, certainly we're as proud of that, and we think we're the best in town for what we do. Board certified neonatologists, board trained and eligible nurse practitioners, nurses, and respiratory therapists to take care. And as we speak today, you know, say a special prayer for the residents of our NICU. We've got 17, I believe, in the NICU this morning who are where you all were at some point previously. Parents having that same level of fear, patients, babies going through the same level of care. It's a remarkable place. I tell people all the time, having a NICU to go back and walk through is a remarkable place for perspective. Because if you think you're having a bad day, just walk back to the NICU and life is good, right? And we are all here to celebrate the fact that life is good. So we're glad you're here. I want to introduce Kayla Amy. I want to thank her and her husband, Jeff. I get that right? For coming and joining us today. Kayla is a very well-known blogger. We're grateful today that she's actually taken all of her thoughts around her own journey with their daughter Scarlett and put them in a book. We've got copies of the book over here that she'll be signing at the end of the event today, so please don't leave without getting that. It's free. It's yours for the taking. She's got a remarkable story that I'm going to let her tell. But she has been on national media, been well regarded as a spokeswoman for women and families who've been in the same position that you all have been in. So we're looking forward to hear her story today, and with that I'm going to turn over to Kayla. Kayla?
So hi, I'm really thrilled to be here. Jeff and I, we love Chattanooga. We're from Atlanta, so we were not too far away. And I'm looking forward to getting biscuits at Milk and Honey later. It's like my favorite place in the city. So I was really excited to come up because we love the city, but also because NICU reunions, they hold a really special place in my heart. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of our story. My daughter, Scarlett, she was born exactly 25 weeks and 0 days into my pregnancy. When they wheeled me into an operating room, and they cut her from me precisely and swiftly to save her. And we named her Scarlett, and she weighed 1 pound, 8.6 ounces. And it was not what I was expecting when I was expecting. So even though she weighed less than 6 sticks of butter, she was the heaviest thing on my heart for a long time. She was 30 days old before she was stable enough for me to be allowed to hold her. And all told, we ended up spending 156 days in the NICU. So I know some of y'all know, like, that was a very long, hard time. But I learned a lot from that experience about diapers that are smaller than credit cards, and the right way to insert a feeding tube, and how to uncover hope in the middle of really traumatic circumstances. I also learned that people say some pretty outrageous things to you when you have a baby in the NICU. You'd think people would say comforting things, but no. They say things like, well, at least you get to sleep through the night. To which I'm like, yes, definitely. Because you know who sleeps really well? People who have a baby in the hospital. Or people who said to me, but on the bright side, you saved a ton of money on maternity clothes. Sure, that's a silver lining. Or, I know you guys will totally understand this one. You're just being overprotective. Kids need to be exposed to germs. I was like, that's cute. Actually, our kids are probably basically the exact group of children with compromised immune systems who maybe don't need to be exposed to germs, so you're still gonna need to wash your hands a lot. And my very favorite, it must have been kind of nice to have like nurses as your free babysitters. And the nurses in here are like, no. I was like, I'm just saying that when you need a babysitter, you don't just drive to the hospital and drop your baby off like it's a YMCA. So I only really actually thought those things in my head because sarcasm is not a fruit of the spirit. But if somebody congratulates you on getting to sleep through the night while your baby's in the NICU or just fresh home from it, you can do what I did and just say, "Bless your heart." That's practically biblical. The phrase that rubbed me the wrong way for the longest time, though, was when people would say, "Oh, well, I could never do that." And I would think, I don't really have a choice. But time and hindsight has softened me a bit, and I think it's well-meaning. People just don't know what to say. But I think it's also born out of sort of a deep-rooted fear, one that tells us that we don't think we're strong enough to handle the hard things. And I'm sure from the outside looking in, it seems like we probably can't handle something like that. It's a really overwhelming situation. But when you're living it out, you learn that you can, and that for your children, you will. For me, our time in the NICU was sort of reminiscent of my very first day of junior high, when I stood with my back sort of pressed against the lockers and watched everyone else bustling past and feeling completely out of place, like I didn't belong. Everything to me felt foreign, and I didn't know where I fit. And I was never the most confident of girls anyways. Like, I pretty much epitomized the definition of awkward adolescence. I once bought a book that was titled How to Be Cool. So that shows you how cool I was. And the majority of the book was encouraging me to just be confident. And that was not very helpful advice when you're a 13-year-old girl with frizzy hair and oversized glasses and a habit of being picked last for dodgeball, and who once accidentally dropped a package of feminine products in front of the cutest boy in 7th grade. You know those letters in the back of teenage magazines? The women in the room know what I'm talking about, like 17 and YM, and they're all like angsty and asking for advice. I wrote like all of those. So confidence was never my strong suit, and having a baby in the NICU, it just diminished what little bit I had. Having a newborn is already really overwhelming, what with that whole thing about like having this new human being that you're all in charge of and everything. And I had spent years hoping that I would get to experience the blessing of motherhood, and now that it was actually here, I felt so removed from it, with her behind the glass and me on the other side. I was terrified. All I knew about having a micro-preemie was that she was really fragile, and I was afraid that I might break her. It was in 156 days in the NICU that I found my confidence for the very first time in my life. As I learned how to navigate my newfound motherhood amid tubes and wires and monitors, I discovered that my greatest asset had nothing to do with knowing about the medicine. My greatest asset was that I was her mom. That love drove me through surgeries and sustained me through biopsies and PICC lines. And now I can do things that I never thought I would be able to do. Like, I can convert things to the metric system like that. And I spent all of my school years in American remedial math, y'all. I can put a feeding tube down like a boss. I can totally identify whiteout lungs on an x-ray. It's a good party trick. And I'm not at all afraid to make a decision that goes against the status quo when I know that it's in the best interest of my daughter. It was the NICU that taught me that I had something worth saying. And it was the NICU that taught me what it means, how to be an advocate. And it was the NICU that showed me how parenthood is just so much more than merely caregiving. It was the NICU that taught me how to live a life drenched in gratitude. I'm so grateful for every little moment that I might have missed otherwise. The slow rise and fall of her chest at night, the way she sings along loudly to every song on the radio when they told us she might not talk, the way she spins the complete wrong direction in dance class when they told us she might not walk. I'm so grateful for a team of doctors and nurses who cared for my child with such compassion in her most critical days because of their devotion to their calling. I'm so grateful for another sunrise in which her heart beats here alongside mine because of the NICU. The NICU taught me what life looks like slow, the way that there's always something to be thankful for when you're counting heartbeats, and how small things are worth big celebrations. I know that we're here today to celebrate just how far our little ones have come, and I also want to celebrate you. The way that you've cared for them, and the way that you've championed them, and the way that you've kept it all together when things got excruciatingly hard. The way that parenthood set you down on a path that you did not expect, and you flourished there. Everyone wants to know what life in the NICU is like. I wrote a book about the experience, and in every single interview so far, someone has asked me, what was the hardest part of your NICU stay? And prematurity, it broke us, literally. Like my body, my baby, our marriage, our bank account. They were all a bit broken. But they want me to narrow it down into a single instance, one that translates well for the airwaves. And I could choose from so many. I could tell them about the time that she coded and I watched in horror when they tried to resuscitate her, or the time that they sat me down and used words like oscillating ventilator and last resort, or the time I watched them tie her tiny arm to a tongue depressor in a makeshift cast. It wasn't any one moment, I tell them. It was the collective experience of one hard thing after another that culminated in the trauma. It was the sum total of measuring your baby's heartbeats minute by minute and the uncertainty of never knowing what the next one held. It was the immersion in a world where motherhood intersected with medicine and the haunting feeling of being completely incapable of being able to protect your child from the pain. And maybe that was a bit intense for morning radio. I don't think that's what they were expecting. But then again, neither were we. In all of that, there were moments of joy mingled in with the heartache, and I also did not expect the places where I found hope. Like how even though her eyes remained fused shut for 10 days after her birth, whenever she heard my voice when I walked in the room, she would crane her whole body towards it to look for me, because I was her mom. Or how my husband's hands were copied on her exactly, a perfect replica, like the size of a quarter. Or the way she fit against my chest, matching her rise and fall of her breath to mine and giving me a reason to breathe. Or the way I loved her and the way she made us love one another. She was so small, but the story of Scarlett unfolded into something so much bigger. And when I was given the opportunity to write a book about our story, I was a little bit overwhelmed because I wanted to do it justice. I wanted to do justice to the experience of those feelings. And I wanted to write something that might bring hope to other people who found themselves in similar circumstances. And in the middle of writing the book, there was this big news story debating whether or not it was worth it to spend the high cost of the NICU on premature babies. So this is a portion of Anchored that I wrote in response to that question. The one was all bold on the headlines, but was already written in my heart. She is 3 years old now, nearing 4. She's actually almost 5. She was 3 when I wrote this. It takes a very long time to write a book. She's all pigtails and giggles, and we escape to the beach, and I steal away early to watch the sunrise. It hovers over the horizon, breaking in colors across the clouds, and this is always breathtaking to me, the way the dawn comes new every morning. There is the curve of the lagoon beneath our balcony, and I sit with my feet tucked under me and my hands wrapped around a coffee cup, because it's early. I tie my salt-soaked hair up in a bun, and I hear her stirring, and I have plans for the morning. The boardwalk winds its way to the beach, stretching nearly a mile between us and the shore, and I carry her all the way, because I can. It won't be much longer that I am able. She's all long-limbed and growing. She is sleep-laden, heavy and heavy-lidded, but I do not want her to miss this. The brilliance of ephemeral morning by the sea. We hear the waves before we see them, the rush of where the water meets the land and fades back out because of a moon and a tide, and how once upon a time, God spoke a Genesis to the earth and called it good. I want to introduce her to the life that teems in the tide pools, the frail and the fragile that survive in the swirling crash of the sea. The treasures that you have to seek out, how there's always a miracle to be found if you know where to look for it. I'm hoping to spot a sand dollar or spy a crab scuttling sideways across the sand, but the beach looks barren except for some broken bits of shells strewn across the shoreline. She spots it first because she knows her shapes. And it is perfectly silhouetted against the sand, this starfish. For the duration of the trip, I have held her back from sandcastles. She loves to build them only because she loves to destroy them. And when she sees other children painstakingly creating their sandcastles on the beach, she runs over, poised to kick them down. "Oh, nice sandcastle," she says with my hand heavy on her shoulder. "Can I smash it?" She makes friends super easy. So we let her smash her own castles, and I filmed her frenzy, and it is like a chased Miley Cyrus video. She came in like a wrecking ball. It catches me by surprise, then, the way that she stoops low and examines the starfish gently. The starfish is a reflection of her beginnings, stranded and gaping for the water, fading fast outside of the shelter of the womb. I noticed them then, starfish everywhere, strewn along the strip of shore, and I tell her a story that I remember from when I was a little girl. It is about a wise old man who sees a young boy walking down the beach, throwing stranded starfish into the sea. "But young man," the old man exclaimed, "do you not realize that there are miles and miles of beach and there are starfish all along every mile? You can't possibly make a difference." And the boy picked up another starfish, threw it into the sea, and said simply, "It made a difference to that one." She only understands a fraction of this story, the part where we save the starfish from the sun and the receding tide, tossing it back into the waves. She likes to call herself a superhero. She runs ahead to find another one, laughing as the water licks her toes. But I see it as she carefully cups another starfish in her hands. The way we're all inextricably linked in this story, where the smallest of gestures saves a life. The tireless, beautiful work of the surgeons and saints, and the way that it folded in on each other, turning prayer to praise. The way just the right hands held a scalpel, or folded across a table in remembrance, or found mine across a cafeteria table. All for a story that seems so small. Because there is worth to life, to all creatures, great and small. And so it made a difference to this one.